Holy City Center Radio, episode 86, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, February 17th, 2023. Hope you all had a great week. Happy Friday. Hope you have some awesome plans, some good stuff going on this weekend. I'm very excited. My parents are coming in on Saturday. At least that's the plan. And they're going to be staying here for a little while. So I'm really excited to be able to spend some time with them. It hasn't been terribly long, but I haven't seen them since around Christmas. So, a decent amount of time. So I'm excited to see them again. And, I'll keep you all posted on all the fun stuff we do around town. I know we generally go out to eat a few times, whether here and do some other things. So I'll let you know if, what we do and if we do something new, because there's a lot of new restaurants that have been opening up. And, hopefully we'll get to one I can give some feedback. All right, let's get into the stories. As I mentioned in the last episode, a Best of Charleston final voting is underway in the Charleston City paper. Now that it's officially out there, I can talk about it a little bit more in detail. So Holy City Center is a finalist in 4 Best of categories this year. So first of all, thank you all who may have nominated in any of these categories. I really, really appreciate it. And if you can find some time to vote between now and March 8th, that would be amazing in these 4 categories that I'm about to mention. Just look for Holy City Center and click on it. Best local Instagram, local Twitter feed, local social media influencer, and local website. So those are the 4 categories that I'm nominated in this year. And I'd appreciate your votes, and hopefully Holy City Center can take home an award or more, maybe more than one. I'd be very grateful for y'all if you could take some time and do those votes. The link is in the show notes, but it's bestof.charlestoncitypaper.com. You have to put in your email. So if you have an account with the city paper, you just use whatever that account is, and then you can go ahead and vote. Once you click on someone in any category, it saves automatically. There's no submit button or anything like that. You can go back and change votes later if you want to. And there's no minimum amount of categories that you have to vote in. So if you just want to vote in those 4 categories to help me out, you can do that, and I appreciate it. So there's no minimum, so you can vote in as many or as few as you want. Like I said, once you're logged in and you click on, your option, that vote is tallied, and it'll be official when the voting closes in March. So thank you again, and hopefully we can win something. I do have a little bit of 2 gripes with the city paper. Well, one's with the city paper. They did away with the best local interest blog category, which I am thankful and luckily have won 9 years in a row, but they did away with it. So I couldn't get to the lucky 10. A decade would have been pretty sweet. But, for whatever reason, they decided to do away with that category. My assumption is it's probably because there really aren't a lot of blogs out there. And the ones that are generally are not necessarily Charleston focused. So they're not getting, as big of an audience as like a Charleston specific blog would get, just because if you're focused specifically on, say, fitness, or you're a mommy blog or whatever it may be, you're automatically cutting out people who aren't interested in that specific category. So I'm thinking that's probably what happened, but still a little bit of a bummer. But I guess I'll look at it as I went out on top in that category, which is great. But it would have been cool to get to 10 in a row. So they did away with that. Local social media influencer is new. So it's my first time being nominated in that category. My other gripe is not really a gripe. I'm just disappointed. So this podcast won Best Local Podcast last year, which was incredible. It had only been on the air for a year. And not only am I not going to win this year because I'm not even a nominee. What happened? I don't know what happened. Congratulations to all the nominees, but I go from best podcast in the city to not even nominated next year. I must have just completely dropped off over last year. Hey, you know what? I guess I got to do better. Maybe this new format we got going that I debuted after the nomination process, maybe that will help out. But yeah, definitely a little bummed about that, but very much thankful for being nominated in any category. So I appreciate it. So enough of that. I don't want to lose any more potential votes for the future. Let's get to the news. That's what you're really here for anyway, right? So let's do that. First up, Murdaugh murders. not a ton of really crazy things happened the last couple days. It felt like every day there's going to be something dramatic and huge that happens. And don't get me wrong, every part of the case is interesting and is big in its own right. But nothing like these crazy things we've heard about, like the bomb threat that came in last week. But still some important things. A lot of it has been DNA testimony, like I mentioned previously, talk about ballistics and things like that. But Maggie Murdaugh's sister did take the stand. We'll talk about that. And then also, I think there's some interesting information that had to do with the lead agent who was investigating the case. So let's dive into that. The aforementioned lead agent who was investigating the deaths of Alex Murdaugh's wife and son zeroed in on inconsistencies in Murdaugh's actions the night of the killings. This was from testimony as well as a videotape interview that was played in court. The interview took place 2 months after the murders. This interview is what ultimately led to Murdaugh becoming the main suspect in the shooting deaths, and it ended with the law enforcement division agent David Owen asking just point blank if Alec had killed his wife and son. And Alec definitely seemed stunned when he was asked that question. He like even repeated it back to him, like, "Wait, you think I did it?" Like he definitely sounded fairly shocked that he. I don't think he had any idea or belief that he was going to be a suspect. He even asked, like, "Wait, do you think I killed my wife?" Like, he was. You could tell he was getting concerned. So anyway, and obviously Alex said no in response to that question. If that wasn't clear, he did not say that he had done it. But Owen's testimony, this was on Wednesday, also ended up opening the door to some cross examination where the defense kind of picked up some points. I think they got Owen to talk about how when he talked to the grand jury that ultimately indicted Murdaugh last summer, he gave them incorrect information about bloodstains on Murdaugh's T-shirt and the several shotguns in the house. So, he admitted basically that he kind of gave some incorrect information. He didn't say he lied, maybe it was a mistake, but so that kind of makes people, I'm sure, on the jury go, "Oh, wait a minute, this guy, is he careless? Is he just trying to push something that, he's just trying to make this fit?" So I think that was good for the defense for sure. Owen also ended up testifying in cross examination that agents didn't search the property where Murdaugh's mother lived. Didn't look for weapons, bloody clothes, or anything like that for even 3 months after the killings. Uh, and it's not like they weren't aware that Murdaugh had been to that house. He had told them that. That's where he came from, supposedly, when he found the body. So just trying to poke holes, saying that investigators really didn't try to look into anybody else. They didn't have a lot of evidence, and they're just trying to make this, pin it on Alec, basically. So I think they picked up some good points there, like I said. And just like what we were just talking about, another moment where both sides kind of came out with points, I think. And I'm sorry, I keep saying points. Obviously, not a real thing in a court case, but I'm not too sure what else to say. Small victories? I don't know. But anyway, during that taped interview I mentioned, Owen had brought up evidence that Alec hadn't heard about at the time, which was that Snapchat video that's become a very big part of this case. He had mentioned that this video posted by his son was taken a few hours before the killing, and it showed that Murdaugh was wearing different clothes than what he was wearing when police arrived after he called 911 later that evening. So Owen asked him, "At what point in the evening did you change your clothes?" Alex said he was not sure. And then he kind of paused for several moments and said, "What time of day was it?" He just seemed confused, wasn't sure. "Oh, did I change So I think in that sense, it's bringing up that evidence again, which I think places him at the scene, especially after he said he wasn't down by the kennels, and obviously the video has shown, and people have testified to hearing his voice on that video. But then in cross examination, um, Murdaugh's attorneys pointed out that state agents never asked for those clothes before the interview, even though they knew that Murdaugh had changed. And so again, just trying to poke holes and showing that maybe they were careless or didn't put in the right amount of effort and things like that. So even though we're bringing up this video again, the defense again tried to turn it into, yeah, but all this stuff is circumstantial. Anything that you could have done to really get appropriate information, whether it was Alec or someone else. You just neglected to do it. So I think, again, interesting. I think they both kind of had done well these last few days. Another interesting thing that came up during that cross examination was Owen was asked if he had taken DNA from gang members to compare to any genetic material that was found under Maggie Murdaugh's fingernails. You may remember under her fingernails, they found some DNA, family members, which, nothing out of the ordinary there, but there was one unidentified male's DNA under her fingernails. And so, but why are they talking about gang members? Well, that's because Alec was supposedly buying drugs through a middleman in this money laundering scheme uh, that we've heard about in the past. The defense attorneys, of course, are suggesting that, hey, the middleman, this could be a suspect, because a defense attorney suggested that this person was skimming money and that the drug dealers were angry because of that. Owen ended up saying that, no, we didn't, look into any DNA matches like that. We didn't get any DNA from gang members and things like that. So again, trying to sow some doubt, and it seems like, oh wow, good job by the defense there. But then this opened the door to potentially some new testimony. So prosecutors were expected to rest their case on Thursday, but after all of this, Judge Clifton Newman ruled that questioning about the drug dealers had now opened up prosecutors to be able to present testimony about Alec trying to, when he was shot on the side of the road back in September of 2021. So now, previously, the judge had decided, hey, this weird, suicide for hire plot, allegedly, and whatever it was not going to be part of this court case. But because they brought up the man who allegedly, it's Curtis Eddie Smith, allegedly shot Alec at Alex's request. Now that he's been brought up in this case, this could be talked about in the courtroom. And also, for those who don't remember about that shooting back in September 2021, Murdaugh originally said he was shot when he was changing his flat tire, and then even gave like a false description of the suspect. But later he said that he had actually asked this middleman to kill him so his surviving son could get a $10 million life insurance policy. But when the gunman shot at Alec, he kind of received what I would, maybe someone would call a superficial wound. It just kind of grazed his head. So we could be going a whole nother direction with that whole ridiculousness coming into the court. So we'll see where they go with that. Also, just a quick update on the whole COVID-19 thing. You may remember 2 jurors tested positive, which led to alternatives having to be brought in. There's only 3 alternates left. Judge Newman had said at the beginning of court on Wednesday that all remaining jurors and the alternates had tested negative for COVID-19. So at the moment, looks like they're in the clear there. The only other thing we'll talk about with the case today was Maggie Murdaugh's sister testifying. She said in the weeks after Maggie and Paul were murdered, the relatives were all terrified. They thought there could be somebody out there coming to get them. But investigators had made no arrests. They hadn't named any suspects. No motive was really clear. And so they were all very scared. She testified, however, that Alec didn't seem concerned for his own safety, didn't seem like he was interested in finding, who he would say actually committed these crimes. She thought that was kind of bizarre behavior. You would think he would be scared that he would be next. And you would also think that he'd be talking about who could have done this. But according to Maggie's sister, he, quote, never talked about finding the person or persons responsible for the murders. So that's it for the Murdaugh murder trial wrap up for this week. If anything interesting happens while I'm recording this, I will be sure to update you all on Monday, but that is the latest. From there, let's go into politics. Always something going on in the legislation. Some of this is new, and some of this will be updates on previously talked about conversations. So first up, legislation removing all training requirements to legally carry a handgun in South Carolina is once again advancing in the GOP-dominated state House of Representatives. The bill would make South Carolina the 26th state to approve so-called constitutional carry, following, neighboring states like Georgia, for instance, who passed that law last year. Similar measures here in South Carolina have failed over the years. About the last dozen years is actually what the Post and Courier was reporting. And it mostly failed because of opposition by law enforcement. So I guess GOP, back the blues, support the police, don't talk about defunding the police and yada, yada, yada. And wearing T-shirts and flags with so showing their support, apparently do not care that law enforcement has repeatedly, for over a decade, opposed this measure. And they're moving forward with it. This latest effort comes 2 years after the legislature passed a law allowing gun owners to carry their firearm openly or concealed as long as they went through the training to get a permit. So we already had that on the books, but we got to keep pushing this guns. Got to have guns in every way, shape, and form possible. So they just got to keep on pushing it. And so on February 14th, a committee within the House voted 16-7 to advance this no permit needed measure to the House floor. The vote was along party lines. Republicans currently hold a supermajority in that chamber, so everything is going to probably quickly just get through. So the committee said, "Yep, this is a go. Let's put this on the floor." It is expected to just be approved with very little resistance due to that supermajority. So we'll see what happens there. It is unsure what the Senate's going to do with that bill, though. So just because the House is going to fast track it doesn't mean it's going to be approved in the Senate. So what are people saying now? So supporters are arguing that law-abiding adults shouldn't have to carry, in order to carry a gun, they shouldn't have to get a permission slip from the government, as I've seen some people say. They claim that this is a right that is covered by the Second Amendment. Everything involving guns is covered by the Second Amendment, according to supporters of laws like these. Despite the fact it's unfortunately very much up to interpretation, as nothing expressly is stated. But in any event, opponents, of course, are saying that this is silly to let anyone 18 or older just be able to have a gun with no training, when the only qualification is they just have to be 18 or older and obviously are legally allowed to buy a gun. There are, believe it or not, there are some restrictions of buying a gun. So they say this is silly. You're just going to let just about anybody be able to get a gun and not have to have even at least basic safety training. So that's what the two sides are saying. You clearly, I'm sure you could tell where I land on this issue. I don't understand how people can just buy a weapon and not have to have, like it said, like at least basic safety training. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, even though I would also prefer plenty of training for people who want to buy a deadly weapon. You know, at least have safety training so they don't accidentally shoot themselves, accidentally shoot someone else because they don't know how to properly handle a firearm. I just don't get it at all. And studies, by the way, there are several studies out there that show that these types of, permitless carry laws lead to an increase in violent crime. No kidding, right? It seems like common sense, of course. The studies have also said, crimes like gun thefts go up, which of course, because there's more guns. But, that's also concerning. We already have a lot of guns getting stolen out of people's cars down here. You can see it in the news frequently. This is just going to increase. And then people who weren't supposed to have guns or are trying to steal a gun for the purposes of trying to commit a crime and don't want anything tied to them, it just doesn't make sense. It's just going to make things worse. But when it comes to guns, we all know how it goes here. The Republicans in the legislature and many of their supporters, if it involves guns, they don't think there should be any really any laws or restrictions. Now, I will say that is a small sliver of the party and the country overall. Even places like here in South Carolina, the vast majority of people, including gun owners and supporters of the Second Amendment, believe that there should be certain laws and restrictions in place. So it's so bizarre, just like the abortion debate that we're going to talk about. Yeah, you may have a small sliver of constituents that are very vocal about certain issues, but studies and polls and everything else show that it's actually you be doing the right thing by the majority of your constituents by not passing stuff like this. So it's just really bizarre, and it's also again showing the priorities in this state. Everybody was campaigning on all this infrastructure and fixing inflation and all the things that they were trying to peg on the Democrats because obviously they were in power in the government and President Joe Biden is the president. I'm not saying any of their certain complaints were wrong, just saying that's what a lot of them campaigned on, that they were going to try to fix. And you're not seeing any kind of measures being introduced related to any of that. It's things like guns, abortions, trying to ban CRT. Again, even though CRT is not taught in schools, what people are saying is CRT. That's where their priorities are so far in 2023, not the stuff they said it was going to be. It's just really frustrating on so many levels. So, speaking of abortion, Republicans in the South Carolina House have approved their latest attempt to ban nearly all abortions, but it may not go any further. This is similar to a topic we were just discussing. So, the details on this: the bill was adopted on February 15th by a vote of 83 to 31. Of course, this was along party lines, as you would expect, and it would ban abortions at conception with very limited exceptions. It's very different from a bill that was passed last week in the Senate, which, although is a pretty strict ban in its own right, um, their bill basically tweaked the 6-week ban that the state Supreme Court threw out last month, saying it was unconstitutional based on the violation of privacy rights. So they're trying to tweak it to make it fit where the Supreme Court wouldn't rule that way. So very different bills in the state House and the state Senate, and neither side really seems to be willing to budge. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. They both want a stricter ban in place, but they have vastly different ideas of where that ban should be and what exceptions there should be and when it starts and all that. So even though you would think this would be fast tracked, it might not be because the two sides are very much against each other. So it'll be interesting to see if they can come together, because if they can, Republicans dominate both sides of the legislature, so it should get passed. Obviously, we will see about legal challenges and all that stuff, which are inevitable, I'm sure. So we'll see where this goes. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about kind of a funny law that will hopefully be removed. So, did you know that South Carolina has a law right now in the books that people under the age of 18 cannot play pinball? It is illegal for minors to play pinball in this state. So, yes, the games, you go to an arcade or somewhere that has arcade games. It's a classic pinball thing. Um, Apparently, it's been illegal for a long time for anyone under the age of 18 to play, and it's just kind of sat there in the books. State Representative Todd Rutherford filed a bill in December that would repeal the current prohibition of minors playing pinball machines, a restriction that many see as like a vice control measure that's just been sitting around from past years, and no one really ever got around to it. No one enforces it. So yeah, this seems silly. Seems like a no-brainer. Seems like something you should be able to get off the books. And the representative said he didn't know about this law until his niece brought it up to him. So somehow his niece heard about this somewhere, saw it somewhere, brought it up to him, and he was like, "This is kind of ridiculous. Let's get rid of this law." So until then, you better be careful. If you've got kids or you see kids playing pinball, you better not give them any quarters. You could be an accessory to whatever of the official title of children playing pinball is in the state. So be careful. And lastly, when I moved here to South Carolina, I had heard many things about the South and about South Carolina, some good, some bad, a lot of it not true, um, or overstated, understated. But one thing that seemed legit was this whole Southern hospitality thing. Anytime I came down here to visit friends who had lived here before I moved here, yeah, it seemed that was true. Anywhere I went, people were super nice, they're kind, they're smiling, and and all that kind of stuff. And everyone always seemed to be super helpful. I quickly learned that, well, that doesn't necessarily expand to people moving here from the state of Ohio. Me, not being from Ohio, thought it was kind of funny, learning that there used to be go back to Ohio nights at the River Dogs game. There were bumper stickers, a website. Silly, yes. I didn't think it was that serious. It always seemed weird to me that they were going after people from Ohio specifically. Uh, so I didn't think too much of it. But I will say, after being here for well over a decade now, this hatred and anger towards people who move here is very real in some corners. I don't think it's the majority. Everyone, myself included, will make little snide remarks about tourists or people who are moving here. Oh, even more traffic, or prices of the homes are going to go up, and rent, and we all make little comments like that. But no, I would not be like, oh, I wish people would stop moving here. Heck no, I am someone who moved here. Um, and it'd be silly for me to say someone, to be like, no one should move here anymore. You can be hopeful and wish for things, but I wouldn't be like taking a stand against it. And I'm saying all this because of a proposed law that will incorporate something called what is being called, kind of within the legislature. It's not the official name, but they're calling it the Yankee tax. There is a proposal in the legislature to hike the price that anybody moving here from out of state would have to pay when they want to get their driver's license and South Carolina plates. The bill was filed by Senator Stephen Goldfinch, who is a Republican from Murrells Inlet. He said, quote, what people from out of state are doing is they're coming in and they get the opportunity to basically become part of our state and what we've already built at no cost, end quote. Yeah, Senator Goldfinch. Yes, people move here and stuff has already been built over generations and continues to be fixed and upkept just like every other state in this country. Yeah, obviously they didn't pay for that. They paid for it in another state and then they moved here. They should be allowed to use all those things. Just like I'm sure he would agree that the persons moving to another state out of South Carolina should be allowed to use and take advantage of whatever that state's done. Yes, that's how it works. We're one country. And when people move here, going forward, they pay taxes on all sorts of things, and they're helping the economy by purchasing products and produce and whatever else, gas and everything, taxes, all that good stuff. It's not like they come here, hey, I'm from out of state, I don't gotta pay for anything. So he's legitimately mad that people who, of no fault of their own, weren't born in a state that they've had to move to, and who knows why they had to move here. Just for the heck of it, they got a job, they got transferred, who knows? But no, you don't deserve to have all this stuff that's been built over the generations just because you weren't born in this state. Ridiculous. He goes on to say, quote, they use our roads, our bridges, our schools, and most of them don't pay for any of it, end quote. I don't know what the hell he's talking about there either. What do you mean most of them don't pay for any of it? Anybody who lives here is helping the economy and helping the government in some fashion. What does he mean most of them don't pay for any of it? Again, unless he just means like they didn't pay for it over their life because they live somewhere else, which again, so people come from out of state all the time, not just to move here, to visit. Tourism is huge for South Carolina, especially the Charleston area. Those people are using our roads and bridges. Why are we not all up in arms? Only the people who live here who are going to consistently be providing money to the state? Anyway, this bill, if you're wondering, would allow counties to impose an extra $250 on a driver's license fee and another extra $250 on vehicle licensing and registration fees on any out of state newcomers. The fee hike would need to be approved in a county referendum, which would have to be put on a ballot by either petition or by an ordinance of the local county council. The money raised, of course, would go to things like infrastructure, public education, and green space conservation, all of which great. But again, what the hell, dude? Like, ridiculous. People have been moving to this state and helping not just inform, they're paying taxes, obviously, going forward, Well, some people, some of the best restaurants in Charleston are not owned by people who originally lived here. A lot of businesses aren't either. People who work high up in those places, same thing. If you love this blog and this podcast, I'm not from here originally. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people from out of state who are coming here and providing services, bringing business, and contributing. What is this obsession with wanting to just punish people to move here? And it goes back to what I said. I've only lived in 2 states. I've visited plenty of others. I've talked to people who live in different states, asked them about how people think about if they live in a touristy area, what do they think about tourists? If they live in a place where a lot of people are moving, what do they think about newcomers? And what do they specifically think about newcomers from a different section of the country? So, for instance, I grew up in Connecticut. You know, people might think differently about someone from Massachusetts or New York or Rhode Island moving to Connecticut. They may have a different opinion on someone who came from the deep South or from California, like vastly different areas of the country. And in all those conversations and the places I've lived and the things I've witnessed and heard and read online, I have never seen the vitriol and hate that people have here in South Carolina for people who have moved from somewhere else, specifically people who have moved from what they deem a Yankee area, so New England, Ohio, apparently, or California, the dreaded liberal bastion that is California. And I suspect a lot of that hatred has to do with politics. And I also suspect that hatred that I do see is of probably a vocal minority. Regardless, and maybe it's just because of the nature of how we are now, we're online so much. I, I see it so much more often, you know, uh, with South Carolinians talking trash about, people who moved here. Carpetbaggers, as they would say, of course. And so none of this surprises me. Anytime a Democrat wins an election, it's, must have been all the liberals from out of state who moved here to get them. If legislation doesn't go the way people want, must be the liberals. We can't let the liberals come here and change all our laws and rules. Like I said, it always seems to be tied into politics. Generally, people who don't care about politics don't seem to be having this hatred of people from off, as it were. So even though I haven't seen or heard this kind of stuff in other places, um, I still hope and I'm pretty sure it's a vocal minority. But this is just a representation of when that vocal minority online that you see gets in the ear of a representative, or maybe the representative was one of those people before being elected. And now he is under some bizarre belief that anyone who moves here isn't entitled to use anything here because they didn't pay for it when they didn't live here. I, ridiculous, petty, dumb, unnecessarily like pitting sides against each other. There's no reason to do this. It's always something, right? So anyway, that'll do it for this episode. Before I digress and complain more about this, I just think it's silly. But you know what? I'd rather talk about something silly like that than some of those other legislations, involving education, abortion, um, restrictions, censorship, gun laws. I'm tired of talking about those. I'm tired of the arguments that you see throughout the country about those things. So you know what? This was a nice change of pace. So I will say that. I hope by Monday we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Not so much all this nonsense, I hope you all have a good weekend. I hope the news is quiet, nothing crazy or interesting in that sense happens. But I hope you have a fun and interesting weekend full of good stuff. And also, if you have some downtime this weekend, go to bestof.charlestoncitypaper.com. Maybe give a little click on Holy City Center in those 4 categories I mentioned at the top of the show. I'd really appreciate it. You can also help out by going to holycitycenter.com/shop to purchase some merchandise. You can also go to patreon.com/holycitycenter to help out with one of those subscription levels, and you actually sometimes get some stuff in return. For instance, I will be posting some information shortly about some discounted tickets for Stingrays games. So that's going to be only for Patreon subscribers. So you better get in there. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast if you have a chance. Subscribe to it as well. That makes sure that you don't miss any episodes of Holy City Center Radio, which, by the way, are produced by my friend Lindsay Marie Collins of FMB Radio and LMC Sound System. She is actually one of the nominees for Best Podcast again. She has won the award once, I believe, if not more than once. So since I'm not in there, I can go ahead and campaign for her. Go ahead and give her a vote. A big thanks to her for producing these episodes and being just a podcast extraordinaire. Also, thank you to Tyler Boone, who is not up for any Charleston City Paper Awards. Unfortunately, he now lives in LA. That would explain it. But if he was here, he would be, because you hear his music in every episode, and it's really damn good. So thank you to him and all of you. And until Monday, have a good weekend, and good night, and good luck.